Double Pop, Worship Zone, New Mercy Mornings on your Thursday morning. It's not the end of the week, but you know what? Yeah, you can see it from here. How are you? It's your friend Dave, Double Pop, back with you on your Thursday morning, cruising towards the end of that week. Everything's going so swimmingly well, you just can't even stop yourself from smiling about it. And here we are again, back with New Mercy Mornings. You know how it works. We'll come in throughout the morning, burst in from time to time, have ourselves a laugh, have a scripture, have a discussion. Who knows what we might talk about today? You never know. So hang in. Don't get bored. Everything will work out really, really well. And we might have a live burst in somewhere throughout the morning. You just simply never know. So hang in. Double Pop, Worship Zone on your Thursday morning. Don't miss out. Double Pop, Worship Zone. New Mercy Mornings, 10 minutes to the hour. Where you are and I am. And you know what happens at 10 minutes to the hour? Yeah, scripture verse. Because you know why. Why is that? Jesus, right? Psalm 119:93. I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have preserved my life. Precepts. Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, those are those disclaimers, those basics, those things that you know, you got to tell somebody that you don't think you got to tell them, but you have to tell them. You know, the basic installation features of our life that you think you tell somebody something and that they understand it, and it's just, you know, the generics of our upbringing. You know, don't do this, don't do that. You know, just simple things. You know, don't, you know, look both ways before crossing the street. You know, you know, just the generalities of our life. You know, we need to keep them in mind, in focus, and in view all the time. Okay, you know. We take certain things for granted, okay? You know, coffee's hot, you know? I mean, be careful, you know, taking the lid off or whatever. I mean, we forget the simple rationales of life, but here, you know, and then every once in a while we need to be reminded, you know, not to do something stupid. And you know, when we're being you know, starting our day, and we see the things we take for granted, you know, we do the things that we know we're supposed to do, but then every once in a while we forget, you know, the most simplest of basic things that we should be doing. You know, don't handle something, you know, with bare hands or whatever. And, you know, without thinking, we go ahead and we do those things. You know, there's the laws of Moses that, you know, were laid down. You know, if you stuck to those, okay, you know, a lot of times everything was good. The commands, you know, I haven't forgotten those. You know, you keep those, you keep the commands, all right, and the Lord, you know, will preserve your life. That's, you know, how it goes. You know, we're the very simple basics, okay? The basic operating instructions for a lot of people, okay? The stuff we've been taught, the stuff that we already know, the stuff that got us as far as it got us, okay? Because we're here, and we're here mostly, you know, because of those things. Double Pop, Worship Zone, 53 past. Double Pop, Worship Zone, 20 minutes to the hour on your Thursday morning. You know, it's that time of year that there's an abundance in those, you know, summer vegetables, you know. Summer vegetables, you know, the nice corn, there's squash everywhere, good tomatoes, you know, coming out nice and ripe, and, you know, you get a bunch of nice cherry tomatoes, all different colors now. How that managed to happen when there was only one color all those years ago, I don't know. You know, we messed with whatever. But I remember, you know, growing up, you know, my grandmother, you know, all the Italian ladies loved all the farm vegetables, and they made up, you know, whatever they can make up with squash. And, you know, they had so much of it, they didn't know, you know, what to squash and tomatoes, and, you know, they didn't know what to do with all of it, okay? You know, they just did stuff. And, you know, one of the big things we used to eat, you know, that, you know, my grandmother used to make up was a lot of the Italian kids used to love it. Kuguzil frittata. If you want to look that up, okay, so Italian squash frittata, and it's really good. A little bit of a not too hard, but a little bit of a challenge sometimes to make. If you've never made a frittata before, could be a little challenging, but I've got it mastered down pretty good. My wife loves when I make it. My sister-in-law comes over and she likes it. You cut up a wedge or two. You can eat it like that, or as my grandmother would say, it made a good sandwich. Okay, you threw it on lupulania Italian bread, and it was nothing short of amazing on that. And I used to tell the story about us and my cousins on the beach. We were the only ones eating kugel. So everybody cooking hamburgers and hot dogs on the little grills all over the place, or they were bringing cold cut grinders, or when we're eating kugel. She had a big sandwich of kugel. She cut it up. She said, "All right, you kids, come on over. We're gonna have squash and eggs," and we were the only kids eating squash and eggs on the beach. Okay, before we went back in the water. Another thing that she used to do is my wife, and I taught this one to my wife because she makes it up for me for lunch every day in the summertime because there's so much squash into me. She makes up something called that the Italian ladies used to call ajambot. Okay, if you want to look that up too, it's just JAMBATBOT. Okay, jambot, and puts mixed vegetables, and that's what it pretty much meant, all mixed up vegetables. And it wasn't any rocket science to it. Okay, they cut it up and mix it up with some tomato sauce, served it out to you, a bunch of vegetables, whatever they had in the garden. There was. They'll list recipes online and whatever. My grandmother was always quick to say, "There's no recipe." Okay, whenever you see somebody who has an Italian lady who has a recipe box, that was from an Irish lady. That didn't happen. If you see an Italian lady on TV using a recipe box, the writer is Irish. I'll just tell you right now, we didn't use. I never once saw out of my mother. If my mother had recipe books, if she wanted to cook something that she needed a recipe for something strange we may have never had or whatever, and it was more often than not an Italian thing. It was something that she wanted to find the recipe for, that she wanted to make up, or and cook that. In the entire time I knew my grandmother, I never saw one recipe box, card, book, whatever. They did not have one. Aunt Rose did not have one. Okay, there was no recipe book. But if you want to learn the basics of ajambot, you can look that up. You can Google that and find that. There was no real science. So they'll probably make it look harder than it probably really was. And my wife starts cooking that up for me in the summer, and I take it for lunch every day, and definitely one of my favorite things. And it was my grandmother. I probably got into it with my Aunt Rose one time. She was saying, "Oh yeah, they all came flying over here for food because they wanted." And we go, Aunt Rose probably said to her, "Carm, it's not that hard to make ajambot." But whatever we made whatever she made. Certainly, kugel was fantastic too. Try that out as well. You won't regret it. The worst thing that comes of your failure with kugel, the worst thing that can come with it is you wind up with a squash and egg regular omelet of some kind. You won't regret it. You'll still eat it. Okay, so you won't waste anything. I promise you. You won't come back here flying at me all mad. Double Pop Worship Zone, New Mercy Mornings, talking food. Double Pop Worship Zone, New Mercy Mornings. It's 20 after the hour. Good observances today for the July 30th observances and minor holidays. Really good ones today. Some real epics. Here we go. National Cheesecake Day. Okay, come on. Doesn't get better than cheesesteak, right? And, and watch an episode of the Golden Girls and all that, right? That's nothing like, and there's so many variations to cheesecake now. You can't go wrong. Go to the bakery, pick up a slice of, I don't know, blueberry cheesecake. There's all sorts of good ones. This one I love too. National Chili Dog Day. Yeah, good one. Good middle of the summer one. I like that one. I make a wait for my wife to make chili, and I break out my turkey dogs and cook those up and throw some of her chili on. Cannot go wrong. Okay, love a good chili dog for sure. National Snorkeling Day. You into snorkeling? I never tried it. Probably never will. Really don't like going underwater or anything like that. It's not my thing. But if you're into snorkeling, today's your day. Okay, get out and snorkel somewhere for the day. If you never tried it, maybe there's some places around you can go and learn it or whatever. Get a basic entry level course someplace. Probably won't go wrong. You never know. You may discover something new you like. All right, here's one. National Father-in-Law Day. Okay, I have officially two daughters-in-law. One won't honor me on National Father-in-Law Day. That's for certain. One would if she knew about it. She would probably enjoy it. I have my longest running daughter-in-law, Samantha, would probably if she knew about it, would probably call me up and wish me a happy Father-in-Law's Day. And who definitely probably would if they were actually, they're not married yet. Our youngest son and his girlfriend probably would be all over that. I don't know. She kisses up to me. Because I'm good to her daughters, because her daughters are cool. I've told you before, her daughters are cool, and we're trying to move them into the grandchild picture. See how it goes with Isabel and Elizabeth. They're pretty cool girls, so maybe she cooks good stuff. Maybe she'll cook me something really, really cool today. Who knows? I may have to do some National Paperback Book Day. Okay, I'm just diverting here real quick. National Paperback Book Day. Okay, so this is the day to honor your paperback books. I saw the other day, by the way, something really cool. Okay, like a little mini library where there's a box in the middle of a park, and you can grab a book or leave a book or whatever. And there was a lot of paperback books in there. If you never know, if you run into one of those, you might grab one of those today. I love paperbacks over hardcovers anyway. National Whistleblowers Day. Rat on your employer. Yeah, today's the day to think on your employer, right? Tell on them. If you love your job, tell on your employer today. Today's the day to turn them into the government, right? Yeah, Christian Station are teaching you all this stuff. Yeah, for sure. And lastly, I may have to do something about this. Okay. Today is National Intern Day. She probably does not know that. She's not really an intern. She's higher above an intern. She's a resident. So she's actually not really a student anymore. An intern is still really a student. But we might have to do something. We might have to do something for our work resident Danielle. Not my granddaughter Danielle, but her. I have too many. We have Danielle and neighbor too. I have too many Danielles in my life. But as I've told my granddaughter Danielle, everybody needs a Danielle in their life, and that's for sure. But anyway, yeah, Danielle the resident is more than halfway through now. So we're the end of the year. She may come on board with us. We're gonna see. And she has to pass some tests, but she's doing good. Maybe Danny can eat. Maybe we'll throw some chow in front of Danny, and we'll see how that goes, and call it National Residence Day instead of National Intern Day. Those are those holidays today. We had good ones today. Double Pop, Worship Zone, New Mercy Mornings, on observances for the July 30th. Hope you're having a good morning. Double Pop, Worship Zone, New Mercy Mornings, 15 minutes past the hour on your Thursday. Hope you're doing all right. So, do you know the name, this is from my devotional the other day, do you know the name Elwood Edwards? Well, you may not know his name, but I bet you know his voice, okay? He is the voice of, let me put it to you this way. If you heard, "You've got mail," then you would know Elwood Edwards if you were if you were an AOL person back in the day. Can you imagine that? It was a guy who his ex-wife was working for. Well, they were still married. His ex-wife was working for AOL, and she suggested he had a good voice for that. And she submitted a cassette of him saying, "You've got mail," and also files done, and welcome, those things. And she sent him she submitted the cassette to her bosses that to be the voice of those things on your AOL software. They decided he was perfect for it. They paid him exactly $200 for the cassette, and he never received another penny from AOL ever again. He did okay, though. First of all, he was a big guest on talk shows and variety shows and things like that, and going on those shows, basically telling that same, kind of mundane story over and over again. But being somebody to say, "You got mail" and all that, none of that was ever trademarked or anything. So he. He was able to add it to other things, and when people would come in, have him say things or do things. He got a lot of voiceover work. He got many jobs for appearances, and I think the movie "You Got Mail" made him a pretty penny. Elwood Edwards did okay, even though his wife left him not long after his star began to shine. Let's put it that way. But he got pretty famous. But there's a voice. There's voices we hear that. I remember we talk about Bob Shepard, the voice of Yankee Stadium, who people would often call the voice of God. The players called the voice of God. It was if God said your name when he was on the field. Bob Shepard was very careful to make sure he said your name absolutely correctly. Each time you took the field, the new player would come to the team, and he would say, he would ask, "If I said your name, such and such, would that be correct?" And if the player agreed or corrected him, and he would just look and say, "Thank you," and walk away. And then the next time you'd hear would be on the field. And as they said, the voice of God would announce your name. But would you recognize God's voice if you heard it? Can you imagine there's all the voices we would hear in our lifetime that we would recognize, but do we recognize God's voice when he's telling us stuff? Do we know it's him? Are we sure it's him when we're being told something and it's not somebody else, like the enemy, deceiving us and trying to point us in another direction? It's just, how do you, well, there's a couple ways that you could first of all, John 10:27, Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me." It's in the intimacy with the Lord that his voice becomes clearer. Listening for him as our intimacy grows. How does that happen? Well, we read the word a lot. We pray more. Grow our relationship with him. And then when we're being spoken to by God, we know it's him. And it's not the enemy, and it's not something else. It's not our own imagination. You certainly don't want to follow your own head. Okay? So that's how, when we hear voices, even people we don't know personally, but we know their voice and we hear them, and Elwood Edwards, you'd never knew who he was, and you'd never seen him before, and you never recognized that name and whatever. But as soon as I said, "You got mail," you knew exactly who I was talking about. If the Lord told you had mail, would you know it? Pray on that one. Double Pop Worship Zone, New Mercy Mornings. On your Thursday, I'm Dave. Double Pop Worship Zone, New Mercy Morning on your Thursday, 15 after the hour. So a university student in Liverpool managed in a matter of a few hours to get married and graduate from college all at the same time. How this was done, she got married first. Okay, she got married first, and then as soon as the wedding was over, she went 3 hours. I took a 3-hour ride in her wedding dress to make it on stage to walk for her college graduation. Can you imagine that? I trying to picture this entire scene, walking across the stage in a wedding dress. That's absolutely wild. If that really did happen. I know of people that had their wedding and a baby in the same day. I don't know if that qualifies as madness too, but yeah, there's a lot of crazy stories of things like that took place on the same day. Also, there was a young man working at a cafe in Scotland who managed to see a runaway car with some elderly people in it and sprint to catch up to the car to stop it. I don't know about that one. I am reading this and there's not a lot of detail to this, but I'm trying to figure. I do know a story of somebody who put their vehicle in front of a bus, a runaway bus that had lost their brakes, put their sped up to get their vehicle in front of the bus, and then tapped their brakes slowly to slow the bus down, and then eventually slow the vehicle down to the bottom of where they were and whatnot, and to get the vehicle to stop, saving, I don't know, there was a couple dozen kids inside. And that person was quite a hero. That story, I do know, is true. I am trying to picture the boy running and chasing the car in Scotland to see if to catch that to save the elderly folk. But all right. I mean, I have no reason to doubt that. But that's our good news stories for today. I hope they're true. Double Pop Worship Zone, New Mercy Morning, on your Thursday. Hope we're not telling fairy tales here. Double Pop Worship Zone, New Mercy Morning, Thursday morning. Friday is tomorrow, Friday, and we're going to get you ready for that. Tomorrow we'll be back to end the week with you and finish things up. Don't forget, if you happen to miss any New Mercy Morning stuff, it's available to you right after right in the early part of the afternoon. Be on the Facebook group page, or hang out tonight and listen to it on the station at 8 o'clock. You can do it either way. 10:30 tonight, night flight, go to sleep, rest, relax, get yourself all unwound with the Lord, and get yourself ready for the next day. And you can wake up tomorrow with sunrise right before New Mercy Mornings. Friday starts up all over again. So it's me, Dave Double Pops. It's wishing that Jesus would leave the light on for you. And I wish you nothing but peace, and we'll see you for Friday.